But welcome everybody. Be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to hit the subscribe button.
I remember in middle school when you felt self-conscious if you were the last one to go through puberty. That really went topsy-turvy, didn't it?
Sometimes the house barrage, it's too much explaining yourself and it's too apologetic.
Be sure to hit the notifications bell.
I actually do believe Israel won't just bomb countless civilians.
Be sure to tweet this out. Be sure to put this up on your Facebook.
You have to be kind to people. Be kind to the guys in this mess in the first place.
Put this up on your Reddit.
Chile is a country.
Be sure to cut and paste, a link to this to go into your favorite Facebook chat group.
It's good to see so many normal people in here.
Now, banking isn't just my deep, dark personal secret. It's America's deep, dark secret.
I've never seen it explained so simply anywhere.
Put this on WhatsApp. Put this on Telegram. Put this on your favorite messenger app.
Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel. I am your host and Untitled Anarchist Seagull called Elise. Sorry I'm a little bit late. There was apple pie involved, and if you knew my family's apple pie recipe, you would understand that delays are kind of justified. And why the fuck is this showing that? Wait a second, we have a... Hang on, where is that? Move the... Forbid. There we go, that's what that should be showing, not my Twitch dashboard. How's everybody doing, chat? Have an interesting collection of crap here. We've got a channel I've never actually done anything with before called Atheist Republic, who are really jumping on the completely debunked bullshit about what happened with the Israeli football hooligans in Amsterdam. We've got... Apparently there was a real shit fit over at Pim Tool's studio where pedo neo-Nazi Milo Yiannopoulos showed up to get in a fight with Laura Loomer. Amongst other things, apparently they debated whether the US was founded as a Christian nation, i.e. whether, like, facts matter, because if facts matter, then no, it fucking wasn't. I mean, that's fairly obvious. It was certainly founded as a settler colonial white nationalist ethno-state, but not as a specifically Christian one. Although, considering that a lot of European Christianity is just worshipping whiteness in the first place, I guess you could make that argument. And certainly when right-wing Christians in the US are talking about it, they are talking about it in that sense. We've got Xander Hole, What Hassan Won't Tell You About Ethan Klein. We've got... Let me see, what else? What went fatally wrong with Harris's campaign? That's another Xander Hole one. Let me see. We've got some Darman. Tomboy is shamed at school. Feet. So, kind of curious about various of these. Oh, and we've got Tim Pool's take on the Capitol Hill bathroom ban, the ban on trans people who have any business there actually being allowed in the place, which is what that amounts to. And we got Weedlord, a message from my raging leftist teacher from 6th grade. Actually, that's a short. Why don't we start out with that? And it's too bad there isn't a way to make the chat window from OBS actually stay in the foreground.
My buddy Carl, again, pretends, says I have a long post I want to send you from one of our high school teachers, but it's like 1,200 characters. I can't send it here. It's kind of hilarious, and I want to read it.
Oh, I'm sure it's going to be.
This is it. I'm just going to start. America, you went to bed living on one verbatim reading it, so it might be incorrectly written grammatically. America.
Yeah, I'm sure between Weedlord and the high school teacher, I'm sure that the grammatical errors are all going to be on the teacher's side.
You went to bed living on the greatest democracies the world has ever seen. Okay, right off the bat, you know that it's not a democracy; it's a constitutional republic. So instantly.
Well, I mean, the difference being, first of all, I love it when right-wingers do this, because the idea is to suggest that, yes, it's an oligarchy, but that's a good thing, but they want to make it sound nice, so they call it a constitutional republic.
They can tell this guy's a raging leftist. Okay.
Oh wow. That's one. If there's one thing us raging leftists are known for, it's calling the United States one of the greatest democracies in the world. Yeah, totally a raging leftist thing there.
He woke up to an unhinged, dangerous dictator who will use the Justice Department to punish his political enemies.
So, like, he's going to use the Justice Department for what the Justice Department's kind of always been used for.
It continues in a long-winded sentence, but I have to put a pause there. Said, he was president for 4 years and didn't do any of that. He was not unhinged or dangerous. In fact,
yes, he was hinged. In fact, I mean, you listen to the man himself. He called himself a very stable genius. Like, absolutely nothing. I mean, like, the hingedness is off the charts.
He brought world peace to the world.
Yeah, I mean, don't you remember that, chat? You know, when there was world peace a few years ago?
And it was incredible, and everyone was prosperous during those 4 years.
Wow, like, everyone... I must have not... I must have been on a different planet at the time. Maybe I was in the mirror universe.
Not to mention, the Biden department administration has literally used the Justice Department to go after their political opponents, i.e. Trump.
Well, yeah, I mean, and again, this is kind of what people use the Justice Department for. It's been used for the political opposition for ages. What's actually unusual is that it would actually be used against an ex-president, even though they, of course, did not charge him with any of the really serious crimes he committed.
And his many people that were on his squad. Insane that these people don't recognize that. Who will pull out of NATO and allow Putin to go from one country...
And, like, first of all, no, he's not going to pull out of NATO. And second of all, I mean, that wouldn't be a bad thing.
...to the next with no pushback from the U.S. Putin wanted to join NATO.
I mean, Russia wanted to join NATO. That is true. I'm not sure if Putin was president yet when that happened, but, like, in the late 90s, that, like, Russia actually talked about they wanted to join it. I mean, at the time, you know, it was actually a very mainstream view to point out that expanding NATO the way the U.S. has done, in violation of one of the agreements that led to the reunification of Germany, would probably actually increase the likelihood of some sort of confrontation between the U.S. and Russia, because even the pro-U.S. opposition would be opposed to it.
Years ago, but the Deep State Department didn't let him because they needed a boogeyman. He wanted to join...
Which department is the Deep State Department?
Up with the rest of the West and be part of, moving forward.
Well, yeah, which tells you everything you need to know about moving forward. Like, I mean, right now, for example, NATO is escalating genocidal aggression against Syria. I mean, it's interesting that they're doing that right now. Like, they seem to have waited for the ceasefire in order to actually escalate their, the mass murderous occupation in northern Syria.
This is after the fall of the Soviet Union in the late 90s, but Bill Clinton and the rest of the Bilderberger group probably decided, no, everybody, and then not.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, Weedlord, hang on. See, the point, this is Russia, I mean, Russia joining NATO, the anti-Russia club, obviously wasn't going to happen. Because it's the anti-Russia club. I mean, you would probably have a little bit less risk of World War III if Russia had joined. And at the time, the relations, I mean, at the time, the US was more or less was actually quite happy to let Russia do all sorts of major atrocities, in Chechnya at the time, particularly.
To mention the fact that US has put biolabs all over the world, including eastern Ukraine, along the Russian border, that we now know that they've made biological weapons.
I mean, we don't know that, and biolabs can be a lot of things. I mean, it's true the US has done that, and I mean, certainly the US has laboratories for biological weapons. That's pretty much given. The US was very late to the game on signing the treaty to ban those, which does not exactly suggest that they were particularly keen on not having them. Certainly, Britain has a bioweapons laboratory over at Porton Down, but, like, okay.
Okay, I'm starting to rant here.
Yeah, but let's just, Mr. World Peace, Trump, was the guy who first started sending weapons to Ukraine. Like, Obama and his predecessors had taken the view that that was unnecessarily provocative. So yeah, Mr. World Peace was the guy who started sending the weapons to the regime in Ukraine in the first place. He also bombed Syria. He also, continued the, the war against Palestine, the war against Yemen. That's also part of the world peace.
But obviously, this person is clueless as to why Putin invaded Ukraine. Not to mention the fact that Ukraine was overthrown in 2014 by the CIA.
I mean, I would love to hear Weedlord explain this. I would absolutely just... I hope, Weedlord, please, let's hear you do some geopolitical analysis.
An American government, and then, I don't know, started killing its own citizens for 8 years before the people in the Donbass region were declaring sovereignty. And
well, I mean, that chronology isn't quite right, but, yeah, okay, that is not entirely wrong, but Russia doesn't give a shit about that. Russia doesn't give a shit about that. There's no likelihood that it will get better with the Russian invasion. In fact, the evidence is the invasion has made all of those things worse.
Desperate for anyone to help them because the falsely installed government was taking them out, and it was crazy if you actually know the truth of Ukraine. Okay, anyway.
Wow. You see, this guy exists in order to make... It's like, this is like the guy who liberals will use as their straw man when talking about the proxy war in Ukraine. Precisely because he's so incoherent and gets basic things wrong. Even so much so that even the things that he's almost tolerably accurate on manage to look ridiculous.
You woke up to a narcissistic madman who will let RFK, a vaccine denier, run the health department. He's not a vaccine denier.
Yeah, I mean, he is. I mean, vaccine denier is kind of a weird phrase. I mean, he's not a vaccine... Yeah, I mean, what the fuck? He means an anti-vaxxer, surely. But, I mean, vaccine denier doesn't really make a whole lot of sense as a synonym for that. But okay, where's he gonna go?
He's a vaccine questioner. And I think everybody should be. We all know by the past probably 15 years, if you've opened your eyes, about how much the pharmaceutical companies control different facets of all different types of companies and
well, yeah, I mean, that was one of the big discoveries of the past 15 years, that the pharmaceuticals industry controls companies. You remember that chat when we all discovered that the pharmaceutical industry controls companies? We had no idea what they were doing until then. Yeah, I mean, we were all wondering why it was even called an industry at all, and then it turned out, holy shit, they control companies.
Laws that are being in place and mandates and things that we don't even... 75 years? Pfizer wanted...
He's against mandates because he thinks they're gay.
75 years before we saw behind the curtain of what they were doing with COVID vaccine.
COVID wasn't around for 75 years. It feels like it's been around for 75. Believe me, I mean, if you're one of the relatively few people in the US actually taking it seriously and trying to avoid infection, because literally every bit of information that comes out of the scientific press on what an infection can do to you makes it clear that even one infection is an extremely bad idea, then yeah, it has felt like fucking decades, but it hasn't been. 2020 isn't 75 years ago, Weedlord. Hi, Adria.
I'm just
Didn't know why that came out that way.
Being a questioner is not a bad thing. I think that's a good thing. I think we should all question Big Pharma. That's what he's doing.
No, he isn't.
My goodness, this person's a sheep. Okay. Who will give Musk...
No, this person's such a sheep, he says, as he looks through his list of talking points from Chris Rufo of the Manhattan Institute.
Complete control of the federal government to do as he pleases.
I mean, that is how the presidency works. It's funny how, I mean, this is the thing that gets me about this. The thing that really gets me about this is that we get this kind of language only when it's not a Democrat in charge. When a Democrat's in charge, suddenly, and some people are like, well, why don't they do some good stuff? Why don't they do the things they said they were going to do? Why can't we, like, have gay rights legislated at the federal level, or trans rights legislated at the federal level? Why couldn't we, I don't know, have a functioning healthcare system or something like that? And it's like, no, it turns out, see, the president has no power at all. He just kind of sits there and tweets or something. And when, you know, it's a Republican, they're like, the presidency, it's all powerful. He can do anything he wants. And the thing is, that's actually more accurate. Because, like, presidential power has been blown for decades now, well beyond the very narrowly circumscribed limits that were in the Constitution. But, I mean, it's just wild when I hear liberals saying that stuff, because it's often on the heels of them spending 4 years explaining why the president is powerless.
Holy fuck! The Department of Government Efficiency is designed, and what it will do is...
nothing, really. It is completely... It is... All this is a little activity for the two most annoying hangers-on of Donald Trump to appear to be doing something, but not being given any actual authority over anything. The Department of Government Efficiency is a non-thing.
To question what people do. What exactly do you do here? I think that has been needed to...
We've already got that, though, actually. We've had that for a long time. That's just neoliberalism.
Decades.
We've had it for decades.
We all know the amount of bullshit that is in the United States government, all right, and how much it can be cut. He cut 80% of Twitter and turned it into X, and it runs better.
Well, yeah, he cut all the people who know how to make the thing work, which is why two-factor authentication broke.
Than ever, and it's bigger than ever.
No, it isn't.
People hate on it, but it's incredible. It is.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. It lacks credibility. I mean, it's ridiculous. The people who are, like, acting like it is a new thing for Twitter to be fucking Nazi paradise now that Musk is getting... I mean, that's annoying, because Jack Dorsey, if you looked at his follows back when he was running Twitter, it was all fash. He was actually very much in with the fash, because, like, tech billionaires all seem to be, more or less, at the very least, very comfortable around Nazis. The difference is, Jack Dorsey was at least trying to make it make money. And because he was trying to make it make money, he wanted advertisers to be happy. And advertisers don't really like it when they're like, I don't know, their fucking Honey Nut Cheerios is trending right alongside dank Hitler memes. So he clamped down on that. But fucking Elon Musk is trying to run Twitter into the ground. I don't believe that that's an accident. At this point, as inept as Elon Musk is, and he truly is inept. I mean, there's so many decisions that I've seen since he took over, where the only way it makes any sense at all is if he's trying to just tank it. If it's like the social media version of the Harris campaign, really, get a whole bunch of money in there and then make it worthless. Like his block rules actually violate the standards, the privacy standards of all the major app stores, for example. Because they actually allow people to see your shit when you've blocked them, so you don't have any control over who sees your stuff. That actually could get them taken down if enough people are reporting that. I mean, really, they ought to be taking it down now, but they should be helped along there. He's making decisions that clearly lose Twitter money, and it is worth considerably less now. So, I mean, I really do not think that he is actually is doing this by accident.
I'm halfway done, guys. Women, you woke up to the world where you will have no rights over your own body. Women.
I mean, that we're already there, actually. Dobbs already happened. What could have happened to fix that is if the Democrats had gone and codified Roe. That law was there. The Democrats had, their excuse was that one guy somehow was a holdout. And we're supposed to pretend that they have no way of exercising pressure over one guy. One guy who's actually very vulnerable to being primaried.
Also voted for Trump, you dumbass. Okay? Women are also against abortion.
Actually, I mean, yes, there are women who are against abortion rights. When it's somebody else, anyway. But actually, the overwhelming majority of the population, especially women, are for them. And that is not inconsistent with the election result, because nobody got a majority in that election. We pretend, we're supposed to pretend that abstention doesn't count. But, I mean, Trump got, at best a third of the vote. At best a third of the electorate. That still is entirely consistent with the polling results that show the overwhelming majority of the population support abortion rights.
Alright? Do you not realize that? Abortion also went to the states. It's a state issue.
Yeah, that sucks, actually. That's the problem. That's the problem. When something that basic, which is literally a matter of life and death for pregnant people, is now up to these dodgy-ass fucking 2-bit state legislatures, which you can buy off for all of $5. Yeah, that sucks. That's actually why everybody's freaking out. Fucking weed lord.
It wasn't even on the ballot. Trump has no bearing on abortion at all.
Wow. Wait. Okay. So is he doing? He's doing the thing liberals do, where they say the president doesn't have any power.
He's not going to change it. They keep lying. They keep saying he's going to do some sort of federal mandate, which he has definitively said
that he may or may not do.
I will not do.
You know he hasn't.
He was the one who was pushing to overthrow Roe v. Wade because it should have gone back to the states.
Well, that's kind of interesting that you bring that up, because the thing is, one thing actually that was standing legally in the way of any kind of federal mandate on the subject that would get in the way of the right to choose whether or not to have an abortion was Roe v. Wade, and by getting rid of it, there is no longer a legal obstacle to that at the federal level.
years ago because it was, in fact, unconstitutional. It should be a state's right. If you don't like it, move to a state where you can kill your own fucking baby.
This is the guy who used to call himself pre-choice. And apparently he doesn't know that an embryo isn't the same thing. Oh, God.
Anyway, I'm almost done, guys. I'm almost done here. Teachers, you woke up to a world where they want to get rid of the Department of Education. Yes, good. Because we need to fund the students, not the shit teachers.
What the fuck does that even mean? Like, so what? The idea, he thinks that what happens when they get rid of the Department of Education, which I think is unlikely, I should note. I don't think that that's actually likely to happen, because there are way too many vested interests, including, like, straight-up right-wing vested interests in having it. But, like, what does he think the funding going to the students actually means? Like, they get rid of the Department of Education and they just give every school-age kid cash?
If you look at the bar graph of where all the money has gone, it hasn't gone to the students. It hasn't even gone to the teachers.
Well, yeah, and that's actually a bad thing. Yeah, I mean, the teachers should be getting paid. Part of the reason this education in this country sucks is that teachers get treated like shit. I mean, and that's not a new thing. I mean, you see a lot more talking about, you know, teachers just straight up leaving the profession because they get treated like shit. They have to work all sorts of unpaid overtime, and they can't afford to live on it. But like when I was 15, which is going back 30 years, I still remember going out for dinner with my family one night, an unusual occurrence, but it happened every once in a while. Went to this place, and our waiter was my Japanese teacher, and it was like, yeah, teachers have been getting screwed over for a very long time.
In fact, it's gone all to the administration staff. If you look at a bar from when the
yeah, because the whole yeah, it is administrative heavy. You think that actually the Republicans want to change that? The reason it's administration heavy is because the whole thing is based on testing now. The whole thing, like funding for public schools, completely comes down these days to test scores. And that means that everybody has to teach to the test. They're deprofessionalizing education, and they're putting all this money into administration because top-heavy organizations are what capitalists like.
Part of education has been, when it came into fruition till now, the only place the money went is into the people who run the Department of Education. That's it. No.
Wait. Did he just say he thinks that the Department of Education is just distributing money to itself? Is that what he meant by administration? Not like school administrators, not district administrators. He thinks that the money just goes to the Department of Education and takes up housekeeping there? Is that what he...
Money has been increased for any of the students. We need to fund the students again. All right? Make education great again. Thus...
When was it ever great in this country? It's always sucked pretty badly.
To the states. So the states can decide...
That's where the money goes, actually, though. The Department of Education is funding schools operating at the state and local level. That's how it works.
What's best for their own children. All right? These people want to be beholden to the state. It fucking pisses me off. I'm almost done.
Well,
okay.
You seem pretty comfortable being beholden to the state too, Weedlord, I have to say. Well, you seem particularly comfortable with people who aren't you being beholden to the state. I mean, that's your argument on abortion. That, anyone who can get pregnant should just be completely beholden to the state. And if they find themselves pregnant in a place that makes it impossible to access life-saving health care, then they should just move because that's so affordable.
Poor people. Here's a message to poor people. And you are the ones who voted for this madman.
No, which is not true. he's gonna probably accept that. That'll be like the one thing that he accepts as true in this letter, and it's bullshit. Trump voters are economically better off both than Democrats and than non-voters.
Basically, just declared all the people who voted poor, who voted for Trump.
Interesting. Wait, are you saying that being poor is a moral judgment on? Well, of course he thinks that being poor should carry a moral stigma for poor people. Like you can't. That is the part of the ticket of admission to reactionary capitalist ideology.
Poor, because we all know Trump will make billionaires richer and punish minorities, and then.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, not that distinguishes him all that much. Like, that's kind of. There's a reason that the Democrats had $1 billion to waste on their campaign, spending it on 1990s nostalgia music acts for some reason. And it wasn't because poor people were handing them money. It was because fucking billionaires were doing it. Because that's basically who funds these campaigns.
People who need it most. Do these people not remember when Trump was in power 4 years ago, 5 years, 6 years ago, when inflation was under control, when we could afford groceries? And
actually, well, I guess you probably could. You're probably you're doing all right, Weed Lord, I imagine. Your grift is solid. But, yeah, actually, no. I mean, although, I thought he was going to go and say, you know, Trump at least made relief payments for people who were out of work and lost their incomes because of the pandemic, and those dried up almost immediately after he left office, which is just one of many ways in which the bar has been just precipitously dropping on every fucking level.
Everything's like crazy expensive.
Because that wasn't even enough money.
In Europe now, and everywhere, even here, it's insane. Inflation's crazy.
I mean, and the standard liberal response to this, I should know, is to say, no, inflation's way down. And it's true, inflation is way down. But the thing about, like, if you're driving to a cliff face at 100 miles an hour, and 2 meters after you... Yes, I'm mixing my metric systems. 2 meters after you've departed the ground and have gone over the cliff, you take it down to 10 miles an hour, you've still gone over the fucking cliff. But, I mean, shit is... like, if he follows through on this tariff bullshit, which I actually doubt, because... shit's going to get even more expensive.
I knew that Trump was going to win 3 months ago. You want to know why?
I mean, that wasn't hard.
Because we were looking at our mortgages, and all the banking systems were going, well, we'll give you this great rate if you lock in now. And I was like, they know Trump's going to win. I knew it because.
Wait. I mean, that's the sort of offer they're constantly making. Every year or two, all sorts of financing. They'll be like, yeah, if you lock in a consolidation loan right now, we'll give you this great rate, and you can lock it in on, terms and conditions apply. But, okay, so why does that...
Because of that. I was like, there's no way that they would do this if Biden was going to be winning. Because Trump is going to lock it down. He's going to shut these people out of their wars, of their bullshit, and return to normalcy.
Right. Yeah, you see, that's why he got a very standard offer for a mortgage refi. It's because they're going to be shut out of their wars and their bullshit, and they're going to return to normalcy. Like, out of all the reasons you could come up with for why you kind of thought Harris was going to lose and Trump was going to win basically by default, as he did, this is the wildest one I've heard. I mean, like, the polls more or less made it pretty clear. The fact that Harris was doing everything possible to alienate voters that she needed made it kind of clear. But no. It's the fact that banks were making refi offers, as they pretty regularly do.
which would have been fantastic. So fuck this guy with his scare tactics. He's not even done. Union workers, you just put a president in power that publicly has laughed with Musk about breaking unions.
I mean, yeah, he did. But let's not pretend that the Democrats are actually any good with unions either. When the railway workers were getting up to what it would have been an absolutely epic strike, a major working class victory, it was Biden and the Democrats who busted that fucking strike and forced them to accept, on pain of fines and potentially even jail time, accept a shit-ass deal that they had already rejected as totally unacceptable.
Some unions are good. Some unions are fucking trash.
Okay, which unions do you think he thinks are good, chat? I mean...
Okay, that's a very nuanced conversation, but I think you all know what I'm talking about, alright? I understand...
Yeah, but I'd be interested in you explaining it anyway. I mean, I know you're gonna say cop unions are great. And, like, unions that represent actual workers, not so much.
The need for unions, but I also understand that they, some of them are too big. Some of them have taken over, like the teachers' union, for example. All right.
No, the teachers' union has been under constant attack for decades. I mean, you think that teachers are so powerful? Like, there's a constant drain from the profession because nobody can make rent on what teachers are getting paid. You gonna tell me that this is a sign that teachers have too much power?
Anyway, this is a much bigger of a conversation there. And to sum it up here, I fear for our country, our grandchildren, my immigrants who are here legally working their ass off.
Fuck you, actually. Who gives a shit? Why should any of us give a shit whether somebody's got legal status or not? It does not matter. It does not affect our lives at all. The entire edifice of immigration law is a bunch of bullshit. The U.S. immigration law, which is some of the most draconian in the world, especially so. Like, who gives a shit if somebody's on legal status or not? Let them stay. I mean, it's fucking stolen land to begin with. Like, who the hell is this regime to be getting all fucking precious about who gets to stay and who has to go?
Will be shipped back to anyone here. Anyone in America legally won't be shipped anywhere because they're there legally. That's the whole point. If you're there legally.
Yeah, that's not how this works. People who are here on legal status get deported all the time because it is an entirely arbitrary system. There are basically no meaningful checks on the exercise of the authority of ICE and CBP. They act with zero accountability. There's basically no access to the courts at any meaningful level. So, yeah, I mean, people are stripped of legal status arbitrarily and just kicked out of the country unceremoniously all the fucking time.
You're not doing anything illegal. They're shipping illegals. This guy's a fucking idiot. Anyway, 4 years from now, we will have time to look back on the permanent damage 4 more years of Trump has caused and wonder how could we have been so stupid? Did we not learn from Hitler's message, one that Trump has embraced?
Who the fuck are these guys now?
That's the end. Thank you, Carl. Holy shit.
He's not gonna... Well, like, what? Wait a second. You're gonna say Hitler's message and then not say what the message is? That's a weird choice because the thing about Hitler is he did say kind of a lot. Yeah, I know. If only, you know, unions were taking over the workplaces. If fucking only. So, yes. That was Weed Lord. So we've got Xander Hole on Ethan Klein. We've got... Xander Hole is going to say some ignorant shit about the ceasefire in Lebanon that Israel has already violated. In fact, Israel actually violated it within the first few minutes after it came into force, because Lebanese people were returning to their homes in the south, which they'd been illegally expelled from by the Zionist regime. And Israel immediately started threatening the civilian population if they continued to return. And in the past 24 hours, they have actually carried out attacks on Lebanese civilians returning to their homes in the south, including, shockingly, in Bint Jbeil. That's shocking because Israel wasn't anywhere near Bint Jbeil before this ceasefire happened. The only way they're in Bint Jbeil to shoot civilians is if they use the ceasefire as cover to make advances that they could not make as long as they were, as long as they were under fire. Because they were they were on the outskirts of the first villages that you get to from the south in Lebanon. The only way that they're suddenly in Bint Jbeil is if they use this as an opportunity to take land. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, some of us are not surprised by this declaration from Caleb. But, I mean, I hope that one's been archived and screenshot and everything. So, let's see. Atheist Republic is going to lie about Amsterdam. We've got Pim Tool on the ban on trans people from the House of Representatives. I mean, except for trans people who have their own private bathroom on the premises, like Sarah McBride, who gave the most pathetic possible response to that. And really the only question there is, did she jump of her own accord, or did the Democrats push her under the bus? And I have a feeling they pushed her on the bus and wanted her to take the lead in getting under the bus so they didn't have to be seen to do it. Either way, absolute shit show.
You're a Nazi that needs to be conquered by the Russians, right? Wait, really? And then they'd go tippity-tippity-tappity and Google it, and then they'd find out he did, and they'd be like, oh shit. So I'm going to go ahead and front-load this segment with those things.
This is Xanderhole joining into Stan Ethan Klein.
Because otherwise, that's what's going to happen.
We saw Ethan Klein defending himself and doing a really, really shitball job of it.
Hassan used to be one of my favorite content creators in the lefty sphere. I thought that he was doing a very good service by being so wide-reaching and progressive, but
then you moved way to the right, got up the Democrats' ass, and now you don't like the fact that he points out that the U.S. does imperialism.
He started getting deep into foreign policy about a year and a half ago, and his takes have gotten abysmal. From being anti-Taiwan and pro-China, anti-Hong Kong, anti-Tibet. He is also very pro-Russia. At least he has walked a lot of these takes back, but the fact that he...
Which is another way of saying that when somebody like Xanderhole strawmans him, claims that he's pro-Russia because he opposes what the U.S. is doing, he says, no, that's not the same thing at all, and then somebody like this will dishonestly call it walking it back.
Vaulted to them and tried to defend them for so long is definitely problematic. Everything from arguing that Russia was never going to invade, and if you thought they were going to invade despite all the...
Well, I mean, it's worth remembering that before the actual invasion, there were multiple times when Russia was doing actual, like, just military exercises near the border, sort of like the U.S. does on the south limit line in Korea every year, sometimes more than once a year. And people who just were going by whatever the State Department says were saying, oh, they're definitely going to invade, and, like, yeah, this happened like 5 or 6 times, and the invasion did not come. So, people who were doubting it the time that it actually did happen were wrong. I doubted it at the time, too, for the same reason that a lot of people did, namely that we'd seen this quite a few times. We were wrong, but there was actually, it was not out of nowhere.
the evidence they were going to invade. You were a war hawk who just wanted war with Russia.
Well, you are.
Annexation of Crimea was totally justified, claiming that defense forces of Ukraine are all just Nazis trying to fight against like the liberation of the Ukrainian people from.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of Nazis. That's probably part of why Xanderhall likes them so much. It's nostalgic for him.
The country not being a Russian satellite state, I guess. He said a lot of really out-of-pocket stuff. And, in fact, Dylan Burns, a beloved journalist content creator who does on-the-ground, endangering his life unarmed in the battlefields of Ukraine and Russia, journalism...
Yeah, no. He's simply grifting off the back of Ukrainians who are being used as cannon fodder by the U.S.
Has actually nearly died multiple times by being struck at his position by the Russians, mind you. And
notice, like, Dylan nearly dying, allegedly, gets way more coverage than the something like 140 now journalists in Gaza who have been systematically murdered.
They, of course, lied about why they did it, claiming that he was part of an armed squad when they were all unarmed press. Regardless, though, Russia's awful. Hassan's made excuses for it. But being in Ukraine, Dylan platformed a few Ukrainians who are all mostly left-leaning, a couple of them even ex-Hassan fans, all to basically see some clips of Hassan talking about the conflict between Russia.
So, oh wow, that's such a... So what you're saying is that people who actually feel comfortable going on the record in Ukraine, a country where people are actually having death threats made against them and being threatened with criminal charges and stuff for such terrible offenses as pointing out that Stepan Bandera was a mass murderer of Jews, which he is. I mean, that is not even a controversial issue, except if you happen to be a Holocaust denier like the government in Ukraine is. But, yeah, so what you're saying is that he talked to people who agree with him, because that is the safe position to take in Ukraine if you don't want to end up dead or in jail.
And Ukraine, and his takes on it. And the takes are just awful, I imagine, to hear if you are a Ukrainian who is currently under siege from Russia, and you're seeing this, like, extremely spoiled, wealthy...
I wonder, Xanderhall, how your takes on Gaza would feel to somebody who's there and being genocided by your boy Joe Biden, while listening to you, like, sneer at anyone who points out that that's what's going on. Wonder how that would feel to them. I bet that would feel kind of shitty. You know, if we could find, like, a journalist in Gaza who is not dead. A lot of them are. They're, like, running out of journalists at this point. They're also running out of doctors at this point. Then I wonder if they would feel very good about how you're representing the situation there with your relatively large platform, Xanderhall.
Rich Beverly Hills, LA streamer talk about how you're a Nazi that needs to be conquered by the Russians, right? Now,
I would love to see him actually source that quote.
They responded to Hassan, and they did so very well, and in response to this, instead of actually watching the video, or even trying to debunk it, or even hearing it out, and maybe finding that he was wrong, he instead refers to Dylan as a war tourist pervert when someone in his chat asks him to cover the video, bans that person, and then refuses to acknowledge...
Okay, now I'm curious, because I also have very little recall of dipshit Dylan Burns. That, what's the deal there? Why would Hassan have said that? I mean, is there anything to that?
...acknowledge it ever again. I do not like Hassan. Frankly, I can't remember more reasons why, but there are more. They're just not coming off the top of my head right now. So, I'm going to hope that anybody...
Well, I mean, he also... You were very angry about him in another recent video, because... he points out that your homie Joe Biden is committing genocide, and that makes you look really bad because you keep telling your audience that that's not what's going on.
Getting their panties in a bunch about me calling out Hassan in this video know that it's not unfounded.
Oh, and in his chat we've got someone called Calico Cali says, every dead Vatnik is a Ukrainian life saved. Now, it's worth noting, Vatniks are Ukrainians. Vatnik is a slur that Ukrainian reactionaries use to refer to the roughly half of the population, I mean, not more like 40% of the population, who are native Russian speakers, particularly those living in the East. So if you say every dead Vatnik is a Ukrainian life saved, that makes that's like literally not how that works, because Vatniks are Ukrainians.
Okay, it is not unfounded. Anyway, we actually have a development in the Hassan versus H3H3 drama that has come out. It is called Hassan Piker is a Weasley Little Liar.
Oh yeah, we watched this. Oh yeah, we watched this last week.
Weasley Little Liar. Dude.
And at no point in the video does he even attempt to show that Hassan lied about anything.
Dude, I've not seen this outside of the first 2 minutes, which is when.
But we did see this already. I didn't realize this is where we were ending up, so maybe we should switch over. We still have time, because it might get a little bit repetitive. We haven't looked at Vush in a while. Speaking of the ass that Xander Hole used to hang off of.
By the way,
let's see what he's getting up to when he's not showing PDF file videos on his stream.
A vice president with principles who meaningfully breaks from the guidance of the Look at Lyndon B. Johnson. Lyndon B. Johnson was in many ways actively resentful of JFK. Hated the guy.
True, actually. In fact, for a while, LBJ was the closest thing, let's say, to an anti-war voice in the White House, under Kennedy. He was the one saying, wait a second, why should we be sending all these people to die in order to impose the wrong government on Vietnam? And everybody just sneered at him in the Kennedy White House.
Broke free. He was he spread his wings, you know? He did a lot of stuff, good and bad, but he certainly wasn't permanently anchored to the,
Though it is worth noting, LBJ said those things, but the reason we even know about them is because the records were declassified decades later. He did not say these things in public.
To the past.
Or I remember when she did that, and it wasn't going to give us what we needed, because it wouldn't be a clean break. It would be, days upon days in a limited time window that we had of dealing.
This is this podcast of the people who fucked up, who did the electoral equivalent of the producers, the Harris campaign, managed to drop $1.8 billion on nothing, really, and now a lot of their lower level waged staff are complaining that they're not getting paid. This is them explaining in their own words why they lost.
When, where. So the best we could do, and the most that she felt comfortable with, was saying, look, vice presidents never break with their presidents.
There's no law that says you can't, and in fact, Biden at one point explicitly gave her permission to differentiate herself. It is true that she absolutely refused, and there wouldn't have been a whole lot to say. And, of course, the trouble of having her be the successor, the anointed successor, was that even if she did make a break it would be like, wait a second, but you've been doing all this horrible shit all along, and now you say you're against it?
The only time in recent memories when Pence broke with Trump.
But then, like, why would you even run her rather than Joe Biden? At least Joe Biden's a white man and therefore not as subject to...
I mean, or, of course that's where he would take it, but I mean, yeah, Joe Biden was also absolutely going to lose. Joe Biden was it was going to be disastrous. The only thing for it actually would have been, now this is a wild idea, but what if they actually had a primary and let people decide for themselves who it should be, rather than just having somebody within the administration that their polls show they need to distance themselves from?
The biases that people would throw against a black woman. Like, if you're going to run with the argument that, like, well, no, there should be functionally no difference between the VP and the president, then why even run the VP? Who can? I
mean, yeah, I really do hate to agree with him, but he's absolutely right. It was a ridiculous choice, and the DNC have only themselves to blame for that. Like, literally, the best thing they could have possibly done is had somebody who was on the outside of that administration run. Because Harris was always going to have the baggage of being associated with a presidency that has ridiculously low approval ratings.
After Trump stormed the Capitol.
They call that the murder exception. If the president tries to murder you, you can break, yes.
How about if the president is committing genocide?
Ripping up the Constitution, trying to overturn an election, people die, then you could break with your president.
Wow, I mean, it would be so weird if anything were going on in this administration where a lot of people were dying. Like, what if there was a pandemic that the entire government is ignoring and dismantling the detection infrastructure for and lying about, and it was well on the way to killing 2 million people totally unnecessarily, and at the same time he was committing genocide in some place. Like, I mean, that would be so weird. Then there would be people dying and you could break with him. Like, I mean, they're talking about this like this is there's no rule. There's no constitutional rule, there's no statutory rule. Fucking vice presidents can say whatever the hell they want. And, you know, the worst that can happen to them for what they say is that the president fires them.
Oh, man. I feel like I have to watch the whole
innovation
thing. I don't know for a fact whether or
that?
not Pod Saves America does the Content ID stuff. We're getting like a whole lot out of the Harris team.
Kamala Harris and Tim Walz urging their supporters to keep up the fight on a call with grassroots organizers yesterday.
I know this is an uncertain time. I'm clear-eyed about that. I know you're clear-eyed about it. And it feels heavy. And I just have to remind you, don't you ever let anybody take your power from you.
Well, that is such a weird thing to say as somebody who was running a campaign that is all about taking people's power from them.
It's very helpful. Thank you very much.
You have the same power that you did before November 5th.
Yes, and obviously what she's about to say is that as workers, we all have the power to take over the means of production, shut this shit down, and organize it as we see fit. That is the power we had before the 5th. That is the power we still have after it. And we just have to exercise it. That's clearly what she means, right?
3 weeks after...
Hold on, wait 1 second. This was good, but I need a little bit more motivation. Could somebody please tell me at what time the stars in the night sky are most visible? That's what I need right now.
In the election, Harris's team is speaking out for the first time in a wide-ranging interview.
You have just as much power as you did before, except in every institutional sense, now that the House, the Senate, and the presidency have been thrown to the Republicans.
Well, I mean, we still have the exact same amount of power as we had before. Institutionally, we have none. And structurally, as the working class, we have a lot. And of course, so it is absolutely silly. There's no way that makes any sense at all unless you're making the argument that, the working class can bring it all down, which obviously Harris must be.
And they have...
Because, I've heard from the Republicans, and she's a communist. So she obviously must be saying that we have our power as workers to shut the shit down.
Already begun their work on dismantling our institutions. In every
Our
sense except
institutions?
literal, you have all the power that you had before November.
With Pod Save America's Dan Pfeiffer.
Yeah, what I don't get about that... there's so many things that make no sense about that. First of all, the line has been he's going to be a dictator from day one, and everything like that, and he has said things that say that he would certainly like to be. As a serial CEO, that is kind of what he's used to. But, okay, if you're saying that, what the fuck power is she even referring to at that point? That statement just makes absolutely no sense. Also, she seemed kind of drunk.
Obama, 4 senior members of the Harris campaign discussed what they think went wrong. One major hurdle, they say, they only had 107 days, and they say that impacted decisions like the number of interviews she could do. Trump, on the other hand...
Bullshit. She could have gone on Joe Rogan.
Well, I don't think that is such a weird thing to base that on. Because, she was already trying to get the far right, and naturally the far right weren't going to fucking vote for her. It was a ridiculous idea. It was one of those donor-driven things where it's policies in search of a demographic that actually fucking wants them and will vote for her.
She didn't want to discuss weed.
Of course, made it part of his campaign.
Yeah, and the thing is, that is actually a weakness for her, because if she actually, first of all, there was the time, she tried to sort of humanize herself a few years ago when she was making that totally ill-fated attempt at run at the presidential primaries, and she gave that interview saying that she used to smoke weed in university, and that pissed a lot of people off. First of all, she tried to make that about being part Jamaican, and that pissed her father off at her. And then the other thing that happened was, Black Twitter was she's going to talk about all the weed she smoked in university when she spent her, entire career bragging about the thousands of black men she put in jail for weed bullshit. That probably wouldn't have been a good thing, which is another reason that maybe not run her.
Here across several popular podcasts.
One of the things I like about doing a show like this, can you imagine Kamala doing this show?
I could imagine her doing this show.
That is just of course, Bush, one of his things is to suggest that people need to be more right-wing, that, the left needs to appeal to the far right more, which is, the audience of the Joe Rogan experience. I think that actually not going on there was a good idea, but spending millions of dollars on a one-off set to go on that, whatever that podcast was that got 800,000 downloads, that was a choice. That was an interesting choice. But yeah.
She'd be laying on the floor.
She was supposed to.
Yeah, there's a lot of intrigue.
We'll go
around
more
this.
over the pod saves.
A lot of theories. And
a date there
impact the outcome one way or the other.
They say
they're gonna just avoid acknowledging that God. I know I've seen summaries of this, and they are going to avoid acknowledging that the genocide played any role. They're going to try to avoid acknowledging that running a very right-wing campaign that was just a slap in the face to BLM, to Black Lives Matter, to, the immigrant rights movements, to LGBT people, to, anyone who, thinks genocide is bad, that also was a problem, because the people that she needed to vote for her overwhelmingly think those things.
Find a date there, and that they don't think it would have
That's a
impacted
lie.
the outcome one way or the other. James Carville weighed in on this question.
Oh God, yeah. Why the fuck are we still hearing from him? Well, I thought we were done with that reptilian-looking motherfucker. And I mean, I say that I really hate that David Icke has made that reptilian thing into. Made that, popularized this ridiculous anti-Semitic conspiracy theory about shape-shifting Jewish lizards ruling the world, because it means that there's a whole bunch of context around pointing out that motherfucker looks like a damn gecko. But he does, and that's nothing to do. Fuck David Icke.
Watch what he had to say.
The vice president was thinking about going on Joe Rogan's show, and a lot of the younger progressive staffers pitched a hissy fit. If I were running a 2028 campaign,
well, yeah, motherfucker, your crowning electoral achievement, James Carville, was taking the low-income vote from 61% of the turnout in 1991 to 47% in 1999. Like, maybe just sit the fuck down. Nobody cared. Nobody wanted to hear from you in the 90s. We're past that. We all kind of hoped, assumed, I'm not sure what the word is, that you might be just dead or something.
I had some little snot-nosed 23-year-old saying, I'm going to resign if you don't do this. Not only would I fire that on the spot.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds harsh, except if you fire them on the spot, rather than having them resigning, they get to claim unemployment. So that's actually a favor from this fucking turtle-ass motherfucker.
Find out who hired
Skeletor, yeah, that's about right.
James Carville's, speaking of like DNC insiders who contribute to the rot.
Spot. I'm really not interested.
Nobody's interested. Like, why does anyone give a fuck what your interest is? I mean, nobody cares. This motherfucker has the pulse, his finger on the pulse right here. Absolutely. This is the guy I go to. His whole thing is looking at Democrats and saying, nope, not right-wing enough yet.
In your uninformed, stupid opinion as to whether you go on Joe Rogan.
Oh, hey, Badger.
Okay, so Jaime, you have the unfortunate position.
My feeling is that historians will write a shitload about this portion of our life. And, I mean, think about this. Just getting back to the whole genocide thing, because I think it can't be mentioned enough, because there's this whole normalization of it that is absolutely freaking me out. And it should freak everybody out, because it's just horrifying and bodes very poorly for the future. But think about this. We have to make inferences, largely, about what ordinary people had to say, in real time during, say, the Rwandan genocide, or in Bosnia, or the Nazi Holocaust, or whatever. Because, there wasn't social media. People weren't on the record the way we all are almost all the time now. Historians are going to be parsing the Palestinian Holocaust, fucking hashtag by hashtag. There will be entire multi-volume authoritative studies of the reception of the Palestinian Holocaust on Twitter versus Facebook versus TikTok versus fucking Instagram, and additional volumes specifically looking at the different ways that it was censored. I mean, historians, when they get to writing about this fucked up period of our life, they're gonna write a whole lot. They will fill entire fucking libraries with all of it.
So many excuses for why Kamala Harris didn't do Joe Rogan, now that it's become clear that that was a really bad move.
I mean, notice here that this is Vosh agreeing with James fucking Carville. But the thing is, the people who watch Joe Rogan are not, for the most part, people who will actually vote for Democrats. The people who hate Joe Rogan, on the other hand, are people who, if they do vote, will probably only vote for Democrats. So, yeah, I mean, this idea that would have made such a difference, it's bullshit. I don't buy it. I mean, and it's so ridiculous to be talking about this and not talking about, like, actual policies, actually talking about the elephant in the room.
At first, the message from the campaign was just, ooh, we couldn't find the time. But now you have people saying, oh, there were progressives within the campaign who were really upset about the...
Yeah, because it would actually be a really bad idea. It would be doubling down. I mean, the message she was already sending with the border bullshit, with the genocide, with, avoiding ever defending trans people. All of that sort of stuff, with all those anti-immigrant ass sheriffs that they paraded around in the convention. I mean, was already like she's dog whistling to the far right, and she's going to throw like core constituencies under the bus completely. And going on Joe Rogan would almost certainly just confirm that. I don't think that would have made a positive difference. Because the people you could pick up, the votes you could pick up there, are not going to go to her, no matter what. I mean, we actually have the figures now. Both times the Democrats have tried to spend a whole lot of time going after this mythical cryptid, this cryptozoological wonder, the moderate white nationalist who would totally vote for a Democrat if the Democrat was just white nationalist enough. And you know how many self-identified Republicans voted for Trump this time? It was 94%. They didn't make a bit of difference because this demographic does not fucking exist.
The idea. And then you have people saying, well, it was because Kamala Harris was really worried about being confronted about her position on marijuana, and it's...
I mean, and... given her history, the thing is, on the one hand, she ought to be worried. She ought to be worried because it's actually fucked up how she, tried to sort of humanize herself and move away from her, cop image by talking about how she used to like to smoke a blunt in university or whatever. But... at the same time, that immediately raises the issue that she put a huge number of people, mostly black men, in prison just over weed beefs. So yeah, I mean, if she had any political instincts at all, she should find that a bit, she should be nervous about that. But I see no evidence she has any political instincts at all. So I don't know if that, I don't entirely buy that is something that made her nervous. It should.
There were probably a bunch of reasons that went
Absolutely
into it.
should.
I think that was the main one. That was the main one. That was the most important one by far.
For the person who has to explain and answer for all of this for us today, what did go wrong?
Yeah. Look, I hate these postmortems. I'm not going to be talking about this.
Yeah, why can't we just pretend? Why can't we just move on and not learn anything? I mean, admittedly, they're going to show you can do one of these postmortems and not learn anything. But, yeah.
And this is going to go on for weeks and weeks and weeks. There were a myriad of things that happened over the course of the last 4 years, and even 8 years that led to what happened on November 5th. Look, two things that stand out to me. I think my friends on the Kamala campaign are correct. 107 days is not enough time to run for president.
We're not talking... I mean, the thing is, what's left out, and the Democrats don't like talking about this, because it reflects poorly on the people they insist on running as candidates. Trump is extremely unpopular. By default, if you had somebody who was even moderately popular and had moderately popular positions on the issues and wasn't already a hate figure because of their history, then there's no reason that should be at all difficult. The Democrats, though, use that as an excuse to run candidates who are absolute fucking garbage. And because the idea is you can just scare people about Trump and they'll vote for any piece of shit you come up with. Except it doesn't work like that because the Democrats are not competing against Republicans. They're competing against abstention. You gotta give them somebody. If you want people to actually vote for you, you have to give them a reason.
That's just a fact. And on the other side, Donald Trump has now run 3 times. This is the 3rd Democratic nominee that he's run against. And so Donald Trump has run for president 3 times, and so he's been able to see this.
And he's run against
a lot more strongly than any of our candidates have.
And let's note, he has run against basically the same campaign twice, and both times he won. Like, I mean, this is the Clinton campaign with the added element of the candidate actively being complicit in genocide at the time. And the Clinton campaign was bad to begin with.
Because we've switched over each of the 3 times, and so.
But you don't have any messaging, so it doesn't.
Well, yeah, but they do have messaging. It's just shithouse messaging. I mean, the messaging is, basically, we're doubling down on genocide. Fuck anyone who disagrees with that. If you think that if you don't like the idea of, if you're Latina living in a border community and you don't like the idea of fucking migra being up your ass all the fucking time and a wall being in your backyard, then fuck your vote, we don't need it. And then, queer people who would like to actually hear someone come and stand in our defense, maybe, because there's been this nasty-ass onslaught that has a lot of people talking about emigrating and actually doing it, and 260,000 at least internally displaced people. And so when you go and refuse to actually stand in defense of them, basically that's another fuck your vote. And all this cop shit, well, I mean, anyone who wanted to see less cop shit, who perhaps doesn't like that we're having a record-breaking 4 years in terms of murders by cops, I mean, that's fuck your vote to them too. And eventually you run out of votes.
Matter. And also, like, maybe you should have a VP who's more active to begin with.
I mean, the thing is, Waltz... Waltz was more active to begin with. And at the time, I mean, like, with that whole thing about, like, these guys are weird, if they had just let him go with that and let that be his trademark, all his negatives, like, sending the military out to attack Black Lives Matter protesters, and his involvement with, I believe it was the Enbridge pipeline after saying he would never do that, and various other things, probably wouldn't matter. The fact that he was just going, wow, look at these guys, they're constantly obsessed with other people's genitals, it's all they talk about, wow, they're weird motherfuckers. I mean, he probably could have carried the fucking campaign with that. Because that was at least some kind of energy. But by the time that debate rolled around, it was like they sent him to some sort of finishing school, or possibly gave him a lobotomy, and you heard him, like, this dead-ass saying, our security depends on the expansion of Israel and its proxies. And just giving absolutely, like, zero fucking energy. Like, I mean, they basically killed the most dynamic aspect of the fucking campaign right there. And that would have been an aspect that would have actually balanced out the fact that, for example, Harris is shithouse on trans rights. Whereas fucking, Waltz actually has a reasonable record on that. And you could use that, but they decided they didn't want to, even though support for trans rights is overwhelming, polls extremely well. Being obsessed with violating trans rights polls extremely badly. They didn't want to do that. They didn't want to defend trans people, which really, it's just wonderful feeling, Yeah, to just know that the entire political class is declaring open season on a very marginalized community. Great, wonderful, wonderful feeling, wonderful times we're living in, nationally and worldwide. But, God, yeah, but of course they're not going to talk about that, and then they got fucking that, like, velociraptor-looking Carville out there to say, no, the problem is they're too woke. Because that's the word he learned recently after hatching. And molting. Yeah, molting more than hatching. Okay, but it is time for me to wrap up. Thank you for joining in. It's always lovely to see you, and I will be back tomorrow at 11:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time to resume the Last JabroniCon. thank you to everyone who's come. It's always wonderful to see you. Hope you have a good night. And fuck Vosh and fuck Harris and fuck Xander Holt.